Hey folks, you're watching Connor and this is episode 2 in the weekly fitness vlog, part 1. So what are we going to be seeing in this video? In this video you're going to see the weigh-in, you're going to see the breakdown of the weigh-in, and then I'm going to be talking to you about my philosophy on dieting and deciding how to approach your diet based on your current level and how to make your diet work for you. You ready? Let's go. Kicking things off, we're going to start with the weigh-in. So just to give you a bit of context, if you haven't seen last week's episode, I've been doing a cut, which is, for those of you that aren't familiar with the term, it's where you're consciously trying to reduce your energy or your calorie intake in order to lose weight over a period of time. Now the reason I'm doing that is because I was initially bulking, which is where you increase your calorie levels to put on as much muscle as possible, but in the process of that I put on some fat, so now I'm trying to lean out. So what I've been trying to do is lose around half a pound a week. So we're going to check this week's weigh-in, we'll see how it goes, and we'll see if we're on track with the progress or if there's something that we need to change. Week 2 weigh-in time, so give the scales a little nudge, wake them up, try and wake me up as well if they would. What are we at? So 11.5. Let's fill it in. So again, down 0.8 pounds. So just over half a pound again. There we have it, folks, another half a pound. That's the way I'm going on track, to be honest. In terms of what I'm going to do now, nothing, right? I'm just going to keep going with the 2100. If it's not broke, you don't need to fix it. It's not particularly exciting, it's not particularly crazy, but it's what works, right? Like, you find something that works and then you keep repeating it until it doesn't work, and then you change it. It's not really more complicated than that, so I'll keep doing the 2100 calories until it's not any longer pushing me in the direction that I want to go. But right now it is, so I'm keeping it as it is. And now I want to talk with you about my general philosophy on dieting, and then the little doggy wants to get in the shot here. This is Frodo. You give me kisses, me kitty. Yeah, he's a very affectionate little dog. If you ever see him, he's not a biter, don't worry. But yes, I want to talk to you now about my general philosophy on dieting, and try not to get mauled with affection by my dog in the meantime. The first principle of dieting that I want to talk about is the idea of doing the diet that works best for you and not necessarily the diet that's perfect, right? So to give you a kind of context of what I do, it's important to understand that most of my dietary decisions originate from a problem I have with food. So without getting into too much detail, right, you may have heard the joke someone says, were you dropped on your head as a kid? I quite literally was, which will probably explain a lot for some of you, right? But yeah, when I was a small kid, I fell from the stairs and I landed head first on the floor. So I was in hospital for a while, as is common with head trauma conditions. People find it difficult to eat after, and then they have a tendency to vomit when they consume food after head trauma. So this was at a very young age, right? Like, I think I was like 1 or 2 or something when this happened. And essentially what it did was it caused me later, leading on for the rest of my life, even into adulthood, to have like a gag reflex when I consumed pretty much like most food. Like, you're talking like more than 95% of foods, I would get like a gag reflex for it, and it would like cause me to vomit if I tried to consume most foods. We tried lots of different things, seeing nutritionists, hypnotherapy, all sorts, but it seems my little brain was just too stubborn to make any kind of adaptation there. So with that in mind, like, you know, there was only 5% of foods that I could consume. So to do bodybuilding, like, I'm not really designed for this, right? Like, it's not really something that you know, I should be doing necessarily, just in terms of, like, you know, sticking to your strengths, right? It's not exactly my strength to be consuming a bunch of food or having the perfect diet. And as a result of that, because I couldn't have the perfect diet, you know, I struggled dietarily for a long time. I was always underweight. But what I did was, rather than try and find the perfect diet, which I couldn't eat anyway, right? Like, you know, whatever you'd call the perfect diet, maybe like grain, rice, oatmeal, lean meats, that sort of thing. Like, I couldn't eat those foods, right? Like, so that wasn't going to work for me. But what I could do is understand the principles behind why they worked, and then maybe use a diet that wasn't completely perfect, but it was one that I could actually stick to. So with that in mind, what kind of diet do I have? I actually have a completely liquid diet. So there are certain solid foods that I can eat, but I've never really been able to gain weight on any noticeable scale on a solid food diet. So I went for liquids, because liquids don't cause that gag reflex in my throat, which means I can get the calories in that my body needs, I can get the nutrients that my body needs and the proteins that my body needs in order to grow and build muscle, but, you know, without having the unfortunate vomiting that comes with going for the foods. So what is my diet now? It's important that I say I'm not advocating my diet, okay? Like, there are better diets than mine. What I'm trying to get you to understand is that the best diet isn't the one that's perfect, it's the one that's perfect for you and that you can stick to, right? So rather than having a diet that's like a 10 out of 10 that you can stick to for a day or 2 weeks if you're really motivated, get a diet that's maybe an 8 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10 that pushes you in the direction you want to go, maybe not as fast as another diet, but is one you can actually stick to in the long term, because that's what's going to get you the results, right? Your results aren't going to come after a week of a fantastic diet. They're going to come after weeks, months, and years of a diet that's pushing you either slowly or quickly in the direction that you want to go. So what's my diet at the minute, for example? Well, it's whole milk, blue milk, right? Where I am, this little blue cap on it. I get apple juice, you know, simple reason it helps with digestion, to be honest, because it was originally just milk and mass gainer protein shakes that I was consuming, like meal replacement shakes. But that wasn't going too well in the toilet department, let's just say. So I had to include some apple juice in there to again, it's not quite giving me the benefit that fruit and vegetables are going to do, but I can't eat fruit and vegetables, so I have to take the next best thing, right? I can't eat lean meat, so I have to do the next best thing and consume milk and you know, meal replacement shakes that have a lot of the nutrients in it that aren't quite as good as food, but like I can't eat solid food, so that's not an option for me, right? So again, I can't stress this enough. I'm not advocating my diet to you, right? I'm not saying that my diet is the optimal one that you should follow. What I'm saying is, if someone is putting forward to you an idea of a perfect diet that you can't do, then it's not the perfect diet for you, okay? Now that doesn't mean that you take the piss, right? Like, your diet still has to move you in the direction that you need to go, right? Like, it can't just be, well, the perfect diet for me is fucking crisps and pizzas, so I guess I'll do that. Like, no, like, it also has to move you in the direction you want to go, right? Like, my diet, I can get a calorie surplus or a calorie deficit, which means, you know, my calories are up or down depending on whether I'm trying to gain weight or lose weight, which pushes me in the weight direction that I want to go. And it's also got a lot of protein in it from the milk and the meal replacement shakes, which helps me build muscle. And of course, there's other nutrients as well. Like, I take a multivitamin, I take fish oil supplements, I supplement creatine monohydrate as well. So I'm getting all the nutrients that my body needs. Granted, not from the most optimal sources, but it's helping me push in the direction that I want to go, right? Now, conversely, the question is, well, you know, if that's the case, then how do I find the perfect diet for me? Like, what do I need to look for in a diet that I can, one, stick to, and two, pushes me in the direction that I want to go? So next, what I want to talk to you about is what you actually need in your diet in order to build a decent physique. Okay, you gonna behave? I don't think he's going to behave, but we'll try our best anyway. So to kind of wrap up the video, I just want to talk to you about how to determine if your diet is moving you in the right direction or not. So it's important to understand that the right direction for you now isn't always going to stay the same, right? Like it changes. If you're overweight right now, the idea of you ever bulking probably seems ridiculous, and yet there will be a time where you will have to bulk. If you're underweight right now, the idea of you ever cutting seems ridiculous, and yet there will be a time where you will have to cut. Oh, you get a big yawn in there, are you? So to give you some context, like I was bulking for over a year, but I'm coming from a place where I was really thin before, so the idea of cutting just seemed kind of silly to me. And it was only when I looked at myself in some photos that I had actually seen that I put on some fat. So that's what caused me to make the cutting decision. Now I kind of want to talk about another big yawn. Yeah, an entire day. Yeah. So I kind of want to talk about what makes you make certain decisions and what pushes your diet in the way it should go. So my understanding of this has evolved a lot as I've went over this journey. And it probably will evolve in the future, right? Like I'm sure I'll look back in this video in a year's time and think like, oh, it was good, but you know, I know a lot more now, right? Like for example, how to not put your dog in a video. But yeah, so let's get kicking off then with. I'm just gonna get away from this guy because he's too distracting. So let's kick off then with how to decide if your diet is moving in the right direction, right? So there's two things that you have to consider on the topic of direction for diet, right? There's one, which is your short-term direction, and two, which is your long-term direction, right? Your long-term direction is always building muscle, right? And your short-term direction is fat manipulation. Now, fat manipulation, a lot of you are going to think, well, does that involve losing fat? Not always, right? Sometimes it's a good thing to put on a little bit of fat, and I'll get into that in a sec. But so in terms of your long-term, that's your muscle, right? And whether you're a man or a woman, your goal should be to put on muscle. I know a lot of women are going to hear that and go, well, I don't want to be big and muscular. You won't. That's not going to happen. Like, that's not a problem. But the reason why you should want to put on muscle, aside from the obvious aesthetic reasons, is the more muscle you have in your frame, the easier it's going to be for you to stay lean, right? Like, imagine if you had no muscle and you were just stripping off all your body fat, you'd still look kind of fat, right? Like, because all you would have is fat. If you have no muscle, then, you know, even if you were to strip down to, you know, really low levels, really low weight, you'd still have like a little bit of belly fat in your belly. So you need muscle, right? You need that toning, as people like to say. Like, what is toning? Toning is building muscle and burning fat, right? So you need that muscle long term to give you the physique you want to have. But the reason I say long term is because building muscle is not a quick process, right? Although oftentimes it can seem like that when you're bulking or cutting, that, you know, you're putting on all this muscle, but in reality a lot of the time it's just fat going up and down, right? But muscle building takes time. So in terms of deciding your diet for the long term, you want to make sure that whether you're bulking or cutting, that you're always getting enough nutrients to actually build muscle, right? So making sure that your protein levels are at the level that you need to be, and that your calorie levels never dipped to a certain dramatic extent that it wouldn't be enough for you to grow muscle. How do you determine that? I mean, it's not really a question that I can answer for you, right? I mean, trial and error is going to be your best bet. There are some things online to determine how much protein your body needs, but ultimately it's the best answer is you're going to need to experiment to determine, like, you know, what your recovery rate's like in different sources of protein. But in any case, your long-term diet, make sure that you're always getting enough nutrients, calories, protein, that sort of thing, to make sure that you're building muscle for the future. Now, as for your short-term, well, that just comes down to your body fat percentage, right? Like, what kind of body fat are you happy with versus what's optimal, right? So if you're in the heavier side and you're carrying a lot of body fat, you're going to want to strip a lot of that off, which is going to mean cutting. But there will come a point eventually where you'll get to the point where maybe you'll hit a wall where you're just not losing weight anymore, which, by the way, is why you do it slowly, right? That's why you restrict your calories really slowly, because if you were to restrict your calories like 1,000 just right away, like, sure, you'd lose a ton of weight up front, but then what's going to happen when your metabolism just crashes and you just can't lose weight in 1,000 anymore? What are you going to do then? Like, are you going to reduce it to 900, 800? Like, how low are you going to go, right? Like you're getting into levels where it's just not going to be conducive for you at all. So you have to be careful and make all your decisions really gradually and really slowly so that your body doesn't get used to it too quick and just completely throw you off. I hope you've taken something from this video that you can use to help you in your own personal fitness journey. As always, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I want to help you as best as I can. Until next time, take care, and I'll see you for part 2.